have to start, let me read our prayer, and then David, if you would kindly do your reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Okay, and here is the quotation for this Shabbat morning. It comes from Shakespeare, from Macbeth. And you know, we're going to have a total eclipse of the sun next year, not in Tucson, but it'll be total in Texas. And we'll get a very good eclipse here. But Macbeth, Shakespeare writes about eclipses without even mentioning them. And here's what he says. By the clock, 'tis day, and yet dark night strangles the traveling lamp. Is it the night's performance or the day's shame that darkness does the face of earth entomb when living light should kiss it? Thank you, Marty, and back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, the earth was, Helena, you having trouble hearing us?
No, I'm finally settling in. Thank you.
Good, good. Hi, Rabbi. And
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Rabbi.
I don't know if most people were aware of this, but there was a huge solar ejection this past week.
I saw it, yes.
Okay. And fortunately was on the far side of the sun. And because it would have played more havoc than we wound up having from it. So if your TV was flickering or things like that, some static in the images and like that, you would have experienced that. Fortunately, we were on the better side so that we didn't receive a full blast. Yes, Don.
Just to add on to that, Marty, that CME was of the strength of the Carrington event of 1859.
Yes.
And if it was directed at us, it probably would have brought down internet, all satellite communications, GPS, everything we run by.
Yes.
So we are really exposed.
It's very correct. There's still more data to come in, but as far as we know, in this particular solar cycle, this is the strongest solar ejection that we've had. But in the scheme of things, it's just a strong burp. When we look at the whole sun, but it really is a whoops.
Yep. Speaking of,
I'm sharing what I saw a few days ago this week.
Okay. Very pretty. But it's a very interesting phenomenon, and I'm sure lots of nice auroras at this time while we will await some of the photographs. Anyway, there's something to be said about auroras and rainbows, okay? Because we've been reading about a new beginning for the Israelites. And with that, I think that's enough to be said. We are on Exodus 35, verse 1.
oh, good.
Would you like me to start the reading, Marty?
Sure.
Okay. And Moses assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel and said unto them, these are the words which the Lord hath commanded, that ye shall do them. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be to you a holy day, a Sabbath of solemn rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth any work therein shall be put to death. You shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day, even if there is a solar flare.
Okay. That's a pretty strict ruling. Okay, we've heard it before. And any comments? Any comments about that? Why do you think this is interspersed in all of these directions to building the temple? And why is it placed here before the actual work begins? Yes, Don.
Well, I was just jumping back a couple of words that the penalty for doing work on the Sabbath makes the interpretation of the word work pretty vital.
Sure.
Even the penalty. So I can understand why the definition of work has undergone so much study over the centuries.
And it
So
has,
my question is, how is work interpreted this verse?
whatever type of occupation, what you had to do for kindling. And this has been discussed before, but the rabbi, I'm going to toss it out to the rabbis because there are a lot of different regulations that and interpretations as newer inventions came along. Yes, Michael.
To answer, to try to give Don a possible answer is that's how one would earn a living. That's the way I think it would be described as work. One who's earning a living at what they do. Because the reason that I say it that way is because there are some people that, for example, myself, very, very difficult to attach the word work to what I did, because it was my livelihood. It was also my hobby. It was so much to me that if I didn't do that, I would have not been alive today. It was so enjoyable that that I couldn't think of earning a living doing anything else. So that's how I come to say that it's the way one would earn a living, making money.
Okay. So I'm going to toss this out to the rabbis first. I know some of the rules and regulations. I know being in a Reform congregation, not as many people do it, but we still have some people in our community that follow the halakhic rule, but for the Sabbath. But I'm going to ask our two rabbis what they feel are the important components of an answer to Don's question.
I'll defer to Rabbi Miri if she wants to begin, and then I'll.
That's not fair.
No, fairness.
It's
polite.
a tough one. Yeah, it's a tough one. But if you look here, I was looking at it again and again because it is weird that you're going to be punished so much when you break the Shabbat. But the Shabbat is also a brit, is one of the britot. And the brit, the covenant, is another covenant. So it's not just breaking the Shabbat by working, but it becomes breaking that covenant. And what's interesting that, again, I notice it now, it says kiot leolam, but because the last word in verse 13, what do you have in English? The last word.
Not in 13. What do you mean in 3?
Well, what I mean is that the Shabbat is an oath, it's a brit that makes you holy. It's not it's beyond don't work. It's beyond not work. And so that's one of the things that I can think about now, that as an ought is bread. But what the Shabbat, there are many sayings that say, for example, they said that the Yehudim, the Jew, is it okay, the sound or something?
Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Okay, that the Shabbat kept Israel, like Israel kept the Shabbat. The connection between
more than
Shabbat,
Israel kept the Shabbat. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's there are other covenants that cannot be replicated, and this is one that each one of us can do, that the entire people could do. I'm just thinking out loud. The other thing that I'll mention later on is the difference between avodah and melacha, two words for working, which is not exactly that. I don't know. You are right, guys, that it's difficult to understand why that punishment. But the more I'm thinking about it, we do Brit Milah still, what you call bris. We do, I don't know, we don't do the Brit Ben Abtarim that Abraham did, but, and one more thought that comes to me, and I don't know how this comes into, is that I think, correct me, in all the people, the nations that live at that time around us, no one had Shabbat. Shabbat is a novelty. I think that's what I learned, and that's what I know among the nations of the time. So I just threw several things, but I don't have a very clear answer that I developed in my mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Rabbi Norman.
I'll jump in. I think Rabbi Miri is very, very correct in leading us to understand and remember that the Shabbat is an oat le'olam. It's a sign. It's a visible sign. And somebody who desecrates Shabbat, it was very visible that they were doing that in the closed community. Don't forget, and the feeling was that they didn't want that person to be setting a pattern and for others to follow. The Shabbat, historically, we observe Shabbat not only to be holy, but for two purposes, and we're reminded of it in when we chant Kiddush. It's Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim and Zecher L'Maseh Bereshit. It reminds us of the act of creation, that God rested on the seventh day, and it reminds us that we have become free to observe the Shabbat. Again, as Rabbi Miri correctly pointed out, the only ones to have that opportunity and that recognition that human beings are entitled to the day of rest. And incidentally, I love pointing out that the mitzvah is not only to rest on Shabbat, it's also to work for the other 6 days. Incidentally, we tend to forget that. The rabbis come along, and in the Mishnah, I don't have the list in front of me, but they identify 39 types of malacha, different types of labor that are prohibited on Shabbat, and some of them are very, very specific and very exact, and others are more general. There is a distinction between melacha and avodah. Avodah, that Hebrew word, we encounter it as Avodat HaKodesh as divine service of that which was done within the confines of the sacrificial cult, for example, because building the tabernacle, as we'll see, is not considered avodah. Okay? Building the tabernacle, even though it was for a holy purpose, is still considered labor. I guess we would use that distinction. And Michael points out that there's a difference in the motivation for what it is that you're doing, as well as the personal sense of gratification and reward of what's the purpose of why I'm doing it. There's a nice midrash, I don't remember where it comes from, with the word malacha, that it's based on, because if you take the aleph out of the middle of the Hebrew word melacha, it leaves you with melech. Okay, so every person would be a king if it wasn't for focusing on the understanding the aleph stands for I or me. If it wasn't for understanding what my role is in understanding that the labor or the work or the occupation or the responsibility that I might have, whether it's to my family, to my community, my people, my institution, whatever it might be. So I think we're recognizing that the avodah, when we're commanded to do something for someone else's sake, the malacha is what we do, how we labor with the challenge of finding out what our role is. Again, within those circles of our family, our community, our institution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I would amplify in response to your question, Marty.
Very good. Very good. Gail?
And Marty, I'll just add something in response, and then I won't. It's interesting, Rabbi Norman, that you mentioned that the melachot that were done in building the tabernacle were okay because it's a holy work. On the other time, I heard, and I don't remember the source, that the labor that it's not allowed is every labor that was done building the tabernacle at that time.
Those were, I believe, those were some of the examples. Right.
No.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Gail?
What I had always thought is to use as a general rule is you weren't supposed to create anything on Shabbat. In other words, I can move books around on my bookcase, but I can't build the bookcase. Okay.
Right. That's one understanding, and you're right. They use that word. Right.
Not to create something is really the.
You're getting closer. That's right. Very good. Excellent, Gail. Thank you. Don?
I'll start by saying how much I enjoyed the insights by the rabbis. And sitting here listening, I was trying to come up with a concrete example because I'm kind of a concrete person. And was listening to what Michael commented about regarding work related to a profession. So I'm trying to imagine a service on a Sabbath, and at the bima is the rabbi and a Levite, and the congregation is grouping up down below, and the rabbi says to the Levite, "So how many are here this morning?" And the Levite, who happens to be a professional mathematician at the local school, says, "Well, there's 20 per row, and I'm counting 20 rows, so there's 400. So is that work? Because it's partly he's answering the question, but he's also displaying some prideful knowledge. And I'm no good at midrashes, but I'm just posing this as
Well, You opened a door that I was going to open after you spoke. So you did it. You stuck your foot in just at the right time.
I just have a question. Does the Levi, is he writing down the
Good
number,
question.
in any kind of record? Because that would be forbidden, but all right.
Right.
Well, that answers my question, Rabbi. That just what you just said answers my question. Yeah.
So, there are many, many different things that come to mind. So it would be okay to think about something, okay, and come up with it in your mind. But even if he speaks that, isn't there a linkage between speech and work? The act of doing? Do you create something that is going to be propagated? So you start wondering about how far in the cycle it goes. I'm going to interrupt myself and talk and let Helene say a few words.
I'm learning so much here, and I'm questioning lighting the candles. Everybody does not light the candles on Friday night. I don't think, do they? Do most people light candles? Okay. And I want to talk about it. And I want to know what this means. 1, 2, 3. That's what my heritage showed. Does this mean the person, the home, and the society? Why 3? Is there
That's
any
beautiful.
reason?
Go ahead, Rabbi Norman. You were going to comment on 3.
Well, I've never heard that one, but I love it. The person, the family, and the community. I love it. Helene, nowhere is it written that you have to wave your hands and do 3.
It's custom.
Some people would do more than 3. Some people will do 1. Some people won't wave their hands. The reason behind covering your eyes is because technically when you say the blessing, right? When you say the blessing, that's when Shabbat starts.
Begins.
Okay, that's when Shabbat starts. So people say, well, I shouldn't see that the candles are already lit because then it's already Shabbat and back and forth, and it's like a legal fiction of making sure that I've done it correctly, and I've not done anything with fire technically after
Lighting.
after Shabbat starts. But the mitzvah also is to have the lights burning. So they develop this custom of we'll cover our eyes. But what do you do if you don't have candles? Do you still say the blessing to light candles and start Shabbat? Yes, you do, even without candles. All right, but this is just to bring the sense, the spirit, the aroma, the beauty of Shabbat into your life, into, like you say, into your family, into your community. The belief is that, and it's actually from a paragraph that we're going to come to in a little bit, that on the Shabbat, each of us has an extra soul. They call it the neshama yetera, and that's also the welcoming the extra soul that joins us on Shabbat. And then we watch it leave on Havdalah at the end on Saturday when we look at our fingernails, because that extra soul leaves through our fingertips. So those are some of the things of where that comes from.
Thank you. Michael has had his hand up for a while.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi. As I understand it, I have several Hebrew calendars, and it tells me that at the time on Friday night when it's supposed to be lit. But as I understand it, you can't, according to the Orthodox, this is as far as I understand it, you don't light the candles after that time.
Right.
You do not light after, and once you do light the candle, as the rabbi said, I would just like to say this, that once you do light those candles before, then you take on the obligation to to uh, to to follow the laws of Shabbat. Once you do it before, as the rabbi said, I wanted to get that in. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to throw into the discussion an extra, yes, Mary.
I want to throw into the discussion
Okay.
to something that we had in the past when we studied Torah and the issue of working on Shabbat. It was a very prominent question since we live in 2023. But one of the things that I kept thinking about is the difference of working for the sake of creating, either because we must, because we are a slave, or maybe because, like Michael, he has to, otherwise he doesn't have enough money to support his family. Or is it something that we do for God? And then here we get into the problem of what is God. In my mind, the issue of, and I called it, and I introduced the word avodah lishma. It's work for its own value. And its own value is also our value. What does it do for us as enhancing our life? And then came like gardening or art or whatever it was that makes you connect with God, and it might be seen as work. So that's something that it always comes, and it's difficult to explain since it brings my notion of godliness. So just that it will be there. And I share with all of you that, except for now with the Zoom, on Shabbat, I don't open my computer. And one of the reasons is that I don't like it. So if it's a work or not, I remove that and make Shabbat for myself with something that might consider work. And I don't want to contaminate myself with such a melacha. And Marty, I apologize, and the stage is
okay.
yours.
I'm going to defer, let Rabbi Norman have a say here.
Okay, it's only because and again, first language, from what Rabbi Miri is saying, it's why many English-speaking rabbis, Jewish scholars, whatever, like to use the word recreation that's permissible on Shabbat, and just pronounce it or respell it as recreation. Okay, so recreate that if it's something, as you said, like gardening, all right,
Yes.
or fashioning something, spending time with the children and the grandchildren, that's recreation.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
the question is not, is it okay to do those things? It's, is it okay to get in the car to drive to be able to do those things? And that's where we run into our 21st century questioning.
And that's the direction, Michael, I'm going to come back to you, but I want to get this in because we're right at this point. I was going to bring up the nature of Sabbath, recognizing the art of creation. What it is, it's a holy day. It's a holy day, a pause in everything. It's a pause in life. It's a pause in creation process. It's a pause in work. Your animals are supposed to be refreshed. As it also, everything comes to a halt. That is and when we talk about God, it's an art to do creation. If you think about what David looks at through the telescope, what a laboratory person looks at through a microscope, and you see all of these intricate worlds, each one a little different and unique by itself. That's work. Musicians know this, artists know this, craftsmen know this, writers know this, and laborers know this. And those that even have to use their head, they know this is work. But at the same time, you need a day, as the rabbis mentioned, you need that day of rest or some period of time to refresh and renew your outlook on things. Why does all of this revolve, and we have mentioned this before, when we use the name Betzalel? As the rabbi pointed out, the shadow of God. And this becomes very important, that when we do that, it's a hint, a very strong hint from God that we need that time so that we can do it again. An artist needs time so that they can say, what do I need to do to make the painting better? Or do I stop what I'm doing? I have a new idea, pick up a new paintbrush and start painting another piece. Writers do this all the time. Okay, poets
in the academic world and others,
sabbatical. Yes, it's a very important thing. And we have been told we are really doing the act of recreating, as the rabbi points out. God needs that rest as well. And maybe we have to look at what is, what else does God recreate for us? And I think it's a very important concept. And when we hear the name Betzalel, maybe it's more than just the name. It's an invitation as well to do things, even if you are a laborer. Make the best roof you can possibly do the best plumbing job you can do. Make the best cabinet you can do. And each has his own task that he excels in. And that's what we are going to be reading about. It doesn't take it for a community to work together, it takes a bunch of individuals. But it has to be organized in a way that with a goal in mind. And that's what that's what all this is about. We're not looking at, this person or that person. It's how it fits into the whole scheme of things. But you couldn't do it without that one person. The community has to have value in that one person. Because without that person, the final product is unfinished. So it's a two-way street between the individual and community here. And this is what Moses' task is that we're going into. Michael, you had your hand up before, and then Rabbi Mary.
Okay, I'm gonna try to remember as best as I can what I wanted to say. On the Shabbat, I try to keep it as best as I can. I know there are things that I do, but what I do is I try to make peace with myself and with God, and I ask for forgiveness. And I try, and I do it, I believe, for the right reasons. I'll give you an example. Rabbi Mary talked about not opening up a computer on Shabbat. She doesn't do it. I don't do it either. Only for this purpose of this study of Torah, which in my life is very important. So I make peace with God and explain. I talk to him. People think I'm talking to myself, but I'm not. And so I explain, and I hope that he forgives me and understands my position, because I'm just a simple creation of, just a simple person here, and that's what I do. And so I think each of us, I think all of us, at some point, do that to try to make peace. They know it's not really the proper kosher thing to do on Shabbat, but it works for that person, and they do it for the right reasons. So I just wanted to get that in.
Very good, Michael. Very good. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
I'm an artist, and when I read about Bezalel, I love one phrase that appears there, and Ruach Elohim bo. The Spirit of God is in him.
Yes.
So here we have an artist that creates.
Yes.
In my mind, that kind of phrase is, I won't use muse or talent or ability to create art. And what happens in those actions, I won't call them works, in those actions is this immersion in what you're doing when the world disappears, is between you and God. And that's the Spirit of God comes to you.
Very good.
That's a phrase I like.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I think that this here, what we're reading here is much more than just the building of a temple. It is or a place of worship. It's how you build a community, and what the responsibility the community has towards the individual and the individual has towards the community. And that's a daunting task. I can only think of one person in recent history that came the closest to having to do this, and that was FDR. The Depression, World War II. And how do you get a group of people, each with different abilities and tasks, how do you get them to rebuild a nation? That was a daunting task. And I don't think he could have done it without his wife. If you think about it, she was the spokesperson. Very interesting. We've had some very good, and another, Abraham Lincoln. Very difficult task. I wonder how much of it, as we read, we'll see what they did. Yes. Yes.
Some people might add David Ben-Gurion to that list.
Yes. Yes. That was a very, very daunting task to come up, because, to create a nation. Not having a constitution, but the Torah as the guidelines for everything was an interesting prospect too, for the court system. Yes, Gail.
I was thinking about Gandhi. That would be my choice.
There's another one. So we admire people who have really shaped our world. Well, think back a few thousand years. I mean, we could say the same thing about the Greeks and the Romans and everything, but it's a daunting task. in any community. Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, as I keep thinking, I'm thinking on the book of Heschel, the Shabbat. And what we're talking about is not here, as you said, a temple and Harabait, Israel. It's not about place. It's about time. And he calls it a temple in time. And that's why we kept thinking, you know, when they said, yeah, when they say that Shabbat kept us, is because it was time that we could carry with us. It did not have to be in a certain place. So, Mekadesh HaShabbat, holifying, I don't know if there is a verb for holy, holifying this period of time. There is a temple of ourself and there is a temple of time. And time keeps moving and it will move and you cannot stop it. You can do with time something, but you cannot stop it.
Very well stated. Very well stated. Yes, Rabbi.
So going back to one of your initial questions, a half an hour ago, from the quotation, what have we learned from this discussion as to why someone who performs work or labor is put to death as opposed to just excommunicated?
Okay.
Okay. With other very, very serious, let's call them crimes, transgressions, mistakes, whatever, they were cut off from the community. But here specifically, it's capital punishment. At least that's the Hebrew. Now, whether the commentators understood it that way is a different story. But how do we reconcile that for ourselves?
Okay. I'm going to toss that out. Yes, Michael.
I don't, listening to that, I had the thought that it might not be exactly that. It could have been meant in another way, and I don't know what that would be. But to be put to death, that's pretty strong. That's as strong as you can get. When, as Marty said, or Rabbi Roman, you can be excommunicated from the community, which would be bad enough. So I don't see it as literal. I just don't see it as being literal.
Anyone else? Well,
After that time, if anybody else has to speak after that, I'll come back and add my thoughts. But I wanted to
okay.
hear if anybody else had.
Well, I was thinking about that. I was going to ask something similar, but what happens if you do any task and do not take a break from it?
You become weary of it. You become
Yes.
tired.
We talk. We have terms. It becomes a rut. We have loss of drive. And there are lots.
It will be the death of me.
That's right. All of these things.
I'm dead.
And as a result, we need some time to replenish ourselves.
You're sick
And
of
that's
it.
how I tend to look at it. In a way, your recreation, using the rabbi's term, ends. You don't give yourself time to recreate, to take that breather, to refresh yourself. And the same thing for anyone, whether it's someone who works for you. In that time, even the slaves, the farm animals, you had to show them the same level of respect, so they could be rebuilt, if you will. Yes, Michael.
You're taking something that you love and turning it into something now that you hate.
No, it's just that if you keep at it, it can become that. It doesn't necessarily mean it will, but it can lead you to hate it. You have to have a little breather.
Well, I don't mean it to be complete
Right.
forever, but you can turn it into something that for that moment, for that time,
Oh,
that
sure.
really you
Sure.
you hate it for a moment or two. Now, I'm not saying that for the rest of your life, no, but
Sure.
something that goes from from uh, from one end of the spectrum to the other momentarily.
Yes, it can happen. Yes, Gail.
I was thinking about taking a breather, or standing back and reflecting. For instance, if
Yeah.
Marsha, I'm sure, is familiar with this, is Mary, if you're painting and going along and you're in the zone and da da da, and all of a sudden you need to stop, stand back and look at what you're doing. So you just need that
Mhm.
pause, the pause that refreshes,
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
know that when I'm reading, if I'm reading, I read mostly nonfiction. And I'll read maybe 2 or 3 heavy duty stuff sometimes. And then I'll pick up a book of fiction and
Same
you know,
here.
just give myself a break.
Very good. Okay, Rabbi.
Okay, so I find it interesting that in the construction of the sentence, and it's verse what is it? It's verse 2, right? At the end. Okay. Um the English would be shall be put to death, or
Mhm.
kol ha'oseh melacha yumat. It's not that anyone who does work will die. It's anyone. It's the causative form of the verb. It does not say that the community will put him to death. Okay, it could be understood, and I do understand as is it's the work
Yeah.
that's going to put him to death, right? So it's not it's the warning that to which you're alluding as well. It's not a punishment from the community for desecrating the Shabbat. It's a warning that that if you don't make that distinction, and if you don't take advantage of this amazingly new institution called Shabbat, and take that time off to renew and refresh and recreate, you're killing yourself
There,
in
Mhm.
in a sense, right? Right.
Very
That's
good.
the way, because I mean, there are some of the commentators that say no, we have to change around the vowels and make it, yes, the community needs to use this individual as an example, and da, 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 da. But that's not the way the exact Hebrew is. And it strikes me that it doesn't say that the community shall rise up against this person and kill him or her. It makes it sound as if the labor, or the work is going to kill him or
Right.
her.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, yes, Gail, and then Amy.
we actually have a phrase. We talk about doing something, and this is going to be the death of me.
Yeah.
This project is going to kill me.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think
Mhm.
that's probably more accurate than, physical death. Because we've all been there, I'm sure, with
Right.
some project or situation, which this is going to be the death of me, literally.
Thank you. Amy. Amy, you're on.
When, when I have had to work long work weeks, 15-hour days, I find I've lost focus. And when you lose focus, you have very little that you can get to your family, your job. You also disconnect in some way just from being tired from the important things, whether it's your faith or your family. So I think the loss of focus was the thing that impacted me the very most when I had a project at work that had hideous work hours.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Do you remember the dwarfs in Snow White? Whistle while you work.
Uh-huh, right.
La
Yeah,
la 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 la
that's
la
right.
la la la
But
Right.
na na na
so
na na
in
na
their
na.
community,
Well, because
the work was very
people call me
important.
all the time. I'm doing something, I can't talk to you.
I'm going to, when Marcia gets back, I just want to mention it for something. I'm going to ask, when people sign on or if they're partaking in the discussion, if they are going to be in any conversation, please remember to mute yourself if you have to go get into that conversation, and then unmute yourself so that you can partake again, because otherwise we hear your voice and it overshadows everything anyone else tries to say. So it's a lesson for all of us, including myself. I goof up sometimes too. So it's just something that'll be helpful to everyone. But this is I think that this is gives us a little better understanding that sometimes when we read a word, it's being used metaphorically. And we need to look into it a little further. And thank you, Rabbi, and others for entering into this discussion. Any other comments about this simple little paragraph, these few lines that David read almost an hour ago? Any further conversation? Yes, David.
Yeah, I was thinking that the idea of what work is and the conversation orbiting around the work will kill you, not the community. But it's often, I've put a lot of thought during my life as to what constitutes work. And I like to think it is work means things that you don't really enjoy doing that much. Building a house, turning on lights and turning off lights, and things like that. But if I am engaged in writing something that I'm passionate about, I don't really consider that work. And talking with friends, the Torah study, that's not work to me. That's a pleasure, and that's what I love.
Thank you. Thank you again. Any other comments? Well, why don't thank you all for this discussion. And now let's see how what the next thing Moses says. So if somebody would like to read verse 4 through 9.
Okay, I shall. And Moses spoke unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, This is the thing which the Lord commanded, saying, Take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it, the Lord's offering, gold and silver and brass, and blue and purple and scarlet, and fine linen and goat's hair, and the reinskins dried red, and sealskins, and acacia wood, and oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, and onyx stones, and stones to be set for the ephod and for the breastplate.
Okay. So any comments about this? Any particular words that may pop out to someone? Yes, Gail, and then Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, I like a translation of the Hebrew. says, take a donation for the Lord from among you, everyone whose heart is moved. That's the phrase I would like
Yes.
to have in the Hebrew. Everyone whose heart is moved shall bring it.
Mm-hmm.
Please, thank you.
Okay.
An offer, a free will offering of the heart. You know,
Yes.
generous, or it comes from the same word as to volunteer, actually. You know, or to give freely from your heart.
So it's not a commandment then, it's,
Well, the commandment is that each person should give what he or she can. It's the first building
Right.
fund campaign in Jewish history. You know.
I like that. Anyway, it's true, but it's funny at the same time.
Yeah.
You
You
missed
know,
your occupation.
Gail Rothschild is called the Nadiv Rothschild,
Right.
the giver with the heart that he gave so much.
You know,
Nadiv Rothschild.
is there a noun for generous, for a person, for an individual who is generous? I mean, there's generosity.
No, on the contrary, the Nadiv brings you to Menadev, that's alms as well. Nedava is alms. So it's
Right,
an
yeah,
interesting use of the same
right.
word. Yeah.
Right.
Very interesting. Yes, Don.
But it's obvious that God doesn't need any of this stuff. But the implication is that for redistribution to those who do need help, but it never actually says that in the text. Not that I've seen. So I wonder if anybody has any comment on that.
Well, you take the context, within the context is for the purpose of building. Okay, you're giving what you can give. So even a poor person is expected to give something, whatever that may be.
And then there is a place before that there is a tax. This is not a tax. So
Right.
they have this difference. Because here you can give $5,000 and a tax will be maybe 5, or it's established. And the tax is not as we would like to have, you know, if you make less, you pay less. Everyone has to pay certain things. So it's very clear that there are 2 types of giving.
Yes.
Right. What happens to it though? I mean, as I said, I'd like to think that it's, even though everybody contributes what they're able, that it's the redistribution, the balance, you know, because I'm sure even then there were the haves and the have-nots. So where does it go to who decides where it goes? And I mean,
the building fund committee. I mean, joking aside, you know, the artisans,
Yes.
the Bezalel and Oholiav, and you know, and they determine, okay, here's all the material that people have brought to us. I'm not sure where they came up with the dolphin skins, but okay. But here's all, you know, here's what everything that's been contributed, and now let's put it into our, compare with the vision that we had, and the blueprints and what God wants, and see what comes up with it. But it's a really good question, Donna. I don't know the answer. What happens to whatever they didn't use? If they,
yeah.
They kept it for the second temple.
maybe.
But
Sorry.
basically there had to be a lot of trade, because a lot of these things are not found in a desert environment, and it would take a huge caravan of camels to be able to haul all of this. Okay, And the desert doesn't have all of this wood, the acacia wood, and like it has some, but you have to trade for it. And so, or you have to buy it one way or the other, but it's something that is very, very weird, where all these people are coming up with all of this. It's not enough to just say that they hauled all of this out of Egypt. If you think about it, the tonnage would have been almost next to impossible to carry. However, we do know of other cultures, not this well, going back as far as this, that were able to hew stones, huge stones, and be able to move them great distances. And so who knows where all this comes from? But it would require
logs of,
that's right.
Huge
Lots of theories out there. Sometimes logs were used, yes. And but this is something that when you look at Stonehenge, it was built in prehistoric times, 6,000 years BC also, for some of the stones that have been dated. And it may have even been before that time that the original stones were implanted in the ground. So things are done in stages too, but this is being done in a very relatively short period of time. One of the words
Marty, I'm sorry, some of it, you left out one, I think, you left out one possible method by which they were able to have some, in addition to bartering, trading, buying, there's also booty.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
From the spoils of war.
The spoils of Egypt. Yes. Yes.
Right.
So, but to do all of that, it would be a tremendous weight. Okay. We measure, if you think about it, when you see these bags of diamonds and the actors are just tossing them around and like that, as if they're nothing, it's another thing, it's not reality. They are heavier than what they depict on the stage. And the same thing with gold, and the same thing with silver, and the same thing with copper. And so if we have to use a little common sense here that says, hey, wait a minute, this had to be a massive undertaking to be able to construct all of this. It's not just a little here and a little there. There's a tremendous amount of effort that had to go into this construction. The other thing I would like to bring up, and I've mentioned it in years past, the word tachash. The rabbi alluded to that a little bit. Was it a seal or a dolphin or things like that? Rabbi, would you like to make either Rabbi Miri or you like to make a comment about the word tachash? What is it?
I'll tell you one thing, Marty. Whenever I see in the translations names of animals, of trees, of stuff, I'm asking myself how you decided that Tachash is a dolphin. So it's a decision that needed to be made because we don't know. We don't know if this animal is the animal that we see now and we think that that's the one. So in this case is an example for me, the issue of the need of translation having something very concrete. Right. Could be the skin of something. And personally.
Now, I do know in the Mediterranean, there are lots of dolphin. So a dolphin skin, I could see. Seal, I haven't seen that many seals. Maybe towards the Atlantic side, towards Spain and like that, you may see more.
I think
don't
there
know.
are seal. I think there are seals. Mary might know. I think there are seals in the Gulf of Aqaba that come
I
out of the Red
know.
Sea.
I live in Eilat for 3 years. No, no seals.
No seals? Okay, all right.
Okay.
No.
So,
Aren't there a lot by Gibraltar on the, near the Atlantic
yeah,
side?
that's why I say towards
Excuse
the
me,
Atlantic
Don,
side.
what was it?
Near
What did
Gibraltar,
you say?
near Gibraltar, on the other side of the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe they had a trade with people all the way from there to get this,
The
if it
Pacific,
wasn't dolphins. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yes, Michael.
yeah, the Pacific is host to a lot of seals, the Pacific Ocean.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, we know
yeah.
that. Yes,
in California, San Francisco, yeah.
that's right.
Well, as I said, and I don't want to come into the details of this, but when I read the Torah, for me, as I said, it's the story, one. And the other thing, and we worked on it in the very, very past, on what's called Pardes, in which we can get to
Mhm.
the pshat, the letters by letters, things by things. Or we can do, as Michael mentioned before, it is a metaphor to die. And we commented on that this way. We didn't say, we say, what does it mean to be death and so forth. So that's why I'm saying that for me, it's all the details that came. And then I read Friedman of how we wrote the title, how
Sure.
the Bible was written.
Very
Sorry,
good.
Rabbi.
It's okay. Yes, Rabbi Norman.
So I'm going to use your question, Marty, to give the following little announcement. Hold on to the question for about a year to a year and a half. Okay, we're in the process of putting together all the details of our Torah writing campaign, and one of the aspects of that year and a half, 2 year long project is going to be that we're going to have a scholar in residence who will be coming in and talking about how translation works and how we've gotten to the point where we can understand Hebrew from thousands of years ago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and in a very entertaining way, as well as a very scholarly way. So if you
Good.
hold on to the question until
Okay.
Professor Hoffman comes to visit, I'm sure he'll have a better answer than any of the rest of us could come
Okay.
up with.
Thank you. That should be very exciting. Yes. If and when we get to that word, as long as if I'm hearing that.
Right. So just we'll all try to remember that question.
Oh, golly. Okay, enough about the Tehash. Any other comments about the paragraph that we just read? Anything about that anyone wants to make about any specific materials, spices, oil, stones for setting?
Rabbi Norman, when we look
Yes.
at the word tachash, let's say that there was a mistake in the writing and you had nachash.
Maybe. Oh, yeah, snake skins.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
Right.
I've
Mhm.
also heard, since you brought it up, that maybe this was just some animal that existed only for the construction of the Mishkan.
Or something that was unique to the desert,
Yeah,
to that particular desert area.
That's right.
And right. And we just don't know what it specifically referred to. Right. Mhm.
so anyway, let's move on. Is there somebody else who would like to read or? Okay, David, you're on. Why
Okay,
don't
this is verse 10.
Yes, 10 through, oh my goodness. Well, if I'm checking. Oh, yeah, we can do this. Why don't you read verse 10 through 19?
Okay,
Give you a big reading here.
okay. And let every wise-hearted man among you come and make all that the Lord hath commanded. The tabernacle, its tent, and its covering, its clasps, and its boards, its bars, its pillars, and its sockets, the ark and the staves thereof, the ark cover and the veil of the screen, the table and its staves, and all its vessels, and the showbread, the candlestick also for the light, and its vessels, and its lamps, and the oil for the light, and the altar of incense, and its staves, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the screen for the door, as the door of the tabernacle, the altar of burnt offering, with its grating of brass, its staves, and all its vessels, the laver and its base, the hangings of the court, and pillars thereof, and their sockets, and the screen for the gate of the court, the pins of the tabernacle, and the pins of the court, and their cords, the plated garments for ministering in the holy place, the holy garments for Aaron the priests, and the garments of his sons to minister in the priest's office.
Okay. Any comments? Yes, Gail.
What is showbread?
Shewbread.
The shewbread, SHEW, the shewbread, right?
Lechem at panim.
What is that?
It's bread.
Just plain, I mean, there's nothing special about it. It's just bread or what?
I don't know, but think about for a moment. In Tucson, we see many during the Dia de los Muertos that people put, I don't remember the name, they put a stand with, and they put their fruits and vegetables and beer bottles. And when I travel in the Far East, also in the temples, there was that kind of thing, having in the place that you pray, there was a lot of food. And maybe just like you have sacrifices and you have oil and you have smells and you have that, you have something that it's a bread. The funny thing is that in Hebrew, it's called the bread of the face or the bread of inside, apnim.
Was it challah?
No.
If they have eggs, if they had eggs, yes.
Yeah, right. More likely it was closer to matzah.
Yeah. It was probably made with, maybe it was early potato bread, latke, like a gigantic latke. I don't know. It is. Any other comments? I know some people have said that there were 12 loaves, one for each tribe given by each tribe. I don't know.
Each with its own recipe.
Yeah.
You had the Litvaks and you had the Galicianas and you had all those, right. Okay.
Well, it just strikes me as odd because everything else is, it's wood and it's metal and whatever, and suddenly we have a loaf of bread or something. I don't know.
It was simply symbolic that on the table there eventually they're going to be offering sacrifices. Whether it's the meat, whether it's the birds, whatever, and that it was there just to symbolize.
And it's for ritual.
I don't recall any reference to anyone actually eating it. I don't remember where I heard it. A number of the things that we see, and we're going to encounter this with Passover too, a number of the things that are described or mentioned in the Torah are there as, let's call them, measure units of measurement.
Mhm.
Okay, so how much of this do you have to have minimally? And that, well, the size of a loaf of bread is what you have, is what you'd have to have. In other words, that kind of a thing.
Okay. Interesting. It is interesting. Any other comments? Rabbi, Rabbi, I'm going to toss this out to Rabbi Mary and Rabbi Roman because of the in verse 17, it just the phrase "its post and its sockets." Rabbi Plaut singles this out as a change in the gender from, if I get it right, Adaniha,
Adanea,
versus
right.
Amud. Well,
the Mudav.
yes, thank you.
But Eden is nekeva. Eden is feminine.
Okay, is there any difference in the type of pole that they're talking about?
Oh no, I know what you're asking. I understand the question. Yeah, because they are talking about this thing, which is the tent of meeting. That's Zahar. That's masculine.
Mhm.
And everything is to the masculine, and all of a sudden, Adonai is for a feminine something.
So, I just didn't
Oh,
know.
the her or its, that's the possessive suffix is in a feminine form, as opposed to everything
Right.
else that's been referred to was in a masculine, that it was his.
Right.
We don't have the distinction in English.
Right.
It's only in the Hebrew. That's what you're asking. Okay.
Okay,
That's what Plaut is pointing out.
very good. Any other comments about this? Okay. If not, David, well, he isn't there. Is there someone else that has a commentary in front of them that they could read from?
I do.
Okay, please.
In the commentary it goes actually through 29, but
I know. Why
10
don't
through
why don't we
19.
break this up a little bit?
Yes,
Do you want to read 20 through 29? Do you want to do that?
I mean, translation,
well,
not
it's
comment, right?
Yes, the translation.
yeah.
I'm sorry,
it's
it
just-
was my fault.
I was going to read the commentary. It's just it's very short.
Oh, with regard to,
4 through, it's actually 10 through 19, what was just read as well. That's
okay,
the-
why don't
the part that
you read
it
that
helped me.
commentary then before we read on?
It just, the call for donations and craftspeople and the people's response. The contents of the tabernacle are listed in more systematic order in chapters 25 through 31. So the whole idea was the call for donations and craftspeople and the people's response. So we haven't heard the people's response yet, but
Right.
I think it's similar to what we've been discussing.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Grace, do you want to read verses 20? It's long. We can, but I think we have enough time to do this whole section. Verse 20 through 29.
Yes, I will. Okay. So the whole community of the Israelites left Moses' presence, and everyone who excelled in ability and everyone whose spirit moved him came, bringing to the Lord his offering for the work of the tent of meeting and for all its service and for the sacral vestments, men and women, all whose hearts moved them, all who would make an elevation offering of gold to the Lord came, bringing brooches, earrings, rings, and pendants, gold objects of all kinds. And everyone who had in his possession blue, purple, and crimson yarns, fine linen, goat's hair, tanned ram skins, and dolphin skins brought them. Everyone who would make gifts of silver or copper brought them as gifts for the Lord. And everyone who had in his possession acacia wood for any work of the service brought that. That's the end of 24. How far did you want me to go?
Through 29. Through 29.
And all the skilled women spun. Okay. And all the skilled women spun with their own hands and brought what they had spun in blue, purple, and crimson yarns and in fine linen. And all the women who excelled in that skill spun the goat's hair. And the chieftains brought lapis lazuli and other stones for setting, for the ephod and for the breastplate, and spices and oil for lighting, for the anointing oil, and for the aromatic incense. Thus the Israelites, all the men and women whose hearts moved them to bring anything for the work that the Lord through Moses had commanded to be done, brought it as a free will offering to the Lord.
Okay. So this raises some interesting discussion as well. First of all, has anyone ever visited or seen pictures of Angkor Wat?
On what?
Angkor Wat. Please, Gail.
No, I've seen it. Pictures. Haven't been there, but I've seen it, yes.
Here's another location where a tremendous amount of work had to go into the construction of this. So it's not unique to a people, but it was for religious purposes. Has anyone seen Stonehenge? Or seen pictures of it? That's right.
I've been
And
there.
yes, and I know there are a number of different theories about it. There are tons of books written about Stonehenge. There are different thoughts for Angkor Wat. Has anyone seen the Great Zimbabwe? Has anyone ever seen photographs of it? In Africa, at some ancient culture that we do not know who they were, okay? But they built this huge structure, okay? And some people think it was a religious site. And each one of these, I'm just using, there are lots of other examples that can be spoken about with Roman and Greek architecture and like that. But it took a tremendous effort among the people to build these things.
What about cathedrals that took hundreds and hundreds of years?
Yes, yes.
Pyramids.
So it is something that it is unique in world history. You know, if you look at it all around the earth, there are a lot of people that it took a tremendous effort Has anyone ever been to Easter Island or read about it? Okay, I've been there and seen these statues. The amount of workmanship that goes into this, these people had to be very dedicated. We don't know how the quarry and all the work are done in one location, and they wind up being erected in another location. Yes.
I think what's more interesting is not the amount of work, but that all these things are communal efforts.
Yes, that's
They're
what
not-
I'm getting after.
It's
That's
not
right.
just a select amount of people that are doing. It takes an entire community to do it.
That's right.
That's more interesting than what the project actually is.
Well, to get to the end point, and that is the most important part of it. Yes, yeah, you are very correct. That's what I was leading up to. That took an entire community.
Marty, I just want to bring up, I'm surprised that those people that like to get that what's written, it's word by word, you would say, well, they're in the middle of the desert, and what, they're going to slap all this that they are building until they got, because the building itself is going to be in Canaan, it's going to be in the promised land. So the question is, what are they building now? Or this is a plan for the future. So there is a big question. It's not for me, the question. I have my answers, but people that really want to know what's going on.
Okay. Grace, you had your hand up also, and then Don, and then I think Rabbi Norman has.
Amy.
Oh, okay.
Amy.
Amy, okay. Amy's in
Some,
shadow and I didn't see. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you, Rabbi
yes,
Mary.
I was just,
Some of these areas that you've mentioned, the construction is so astonishing and so magnificent, especially considering the time frame in which they were produced, that there has been speculation that aliens participated, that there had to be something beyond man on Earth's ability to construct some of these places.
It's a good point.
As long as it was a free will offering,
That's right.
Take it.
Okay, Grace, your hand was up, then Don.
yeah, I just wanted to mention that, it repeatedly tells us that those persons, those craft people and men and women whose heart was willing to give a free will offering. So that I didn't count how many times it mentioned that, but it continually mentioned that their heart was in the right place. So that was a free will offering, is what Rabbi just said. So I found that very enlightening. This is to give from the heart, not just because, I've been commanded to do it, to give from the heart. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Amy, also. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I don't, has anyone heard of Göbekli Tepe in Eastern Turkey? I had to cancel my plans to visit this year because it's in between the Syrian border and the earthquake zone. So it's pretty inaccessible. But Göbekli Tepe is a destroyed civilization that thrived around 9,700 years ago. And it has exquisite carvings, very sophisticated.
I've been there.
Beyond belief that there was a culture that long ago. It was right around the younger, drier big freeze, right at the end of the last ice age. And so there were these sophisticated people doing work as just as fine as the Pharaoh legacy. So, we keep going back further and further and further and finding how intelligent this work was. I don't
And
think we,
some of those ruins go back, have been dated 15,000 BC.
yeah, the Lascaux caves in France, which I visited, that goes back 30,000 years.
Yes.
It's just remarkable. Anyway, I can get carried away with this. So.
It's okay. I can too. But I want to get back to this. But what is different about all of these different sites that exhibit tremendous craftsmanship and involvement of the arts, as well as the religion and the society that they created? What is different here for these Israelites? Are they building a temple?
They're joined together as one.
Yes, but
because
all
they're
these
joined
other
together as
societies
one?
had to do something similar. But there's one thing about this structure that is different from all of the others that I mentioned and everyone else has mentioned.
Going to be portable.
Portable.
Right. So that's the tent of meeting. And in the tent of meeting, would you have all these pieces? And there are instructions how to make it mobile, which is absolutely amazing, that part.
Yes.
I don't have to take word by word. I actually had a bar mitzvah kid that couldn't write very well, so he built a model of the tent of meeting. So I got into all the details very much, but here is not the stuff for carrying is, Rabbi Norman. In the carrying, they had the Aron HaKodesh, and they had the walls that were made out of cloth that they can fold. So they certainly didn't put the gold and the silver and all that stuff. So that's my conundrum if we take it. So in my mind, it cannot be both. It cannot be something that's going to be built and something that can be carried with all this. What do you think?
Well, that's an interesting question. So as usual, why don't you restate the question? Gail has a confused facial expression on right now.
Well, I thought the ark is the solid, heavy piece, but the tent is portable, right? And light and can be taken apart and put together again. But the ark itself with the tablets is, just one solid.
It's an
piece.
ark.
Yes,
Yes.
and they're carrying poles for it. That's right.
Yeah, for that. Yeah.
So this is something
But
that's
then she's talking about the table and the lampstand and the laver and and the sink and all everything that's necessary for the sacrifices, and all, how much of that was actually used in the wilderness and how much of that was just they were building it as an anticipation of its permanent structure wherever that was going to be, wherever God determined the divine presence to be. That's all we knew, or that's all they knew. And so this is all kind of preparation.
right. But as somebody, I forget who mentioned it earlier, but I think it was either Rabbi Mary or Rabbi Norman. For the future, you build it in one place, and you transport it with you to your final destination. Okay. What would we say about that? What does that imply? That whole, everything I just said, what does that imply? Well, I would say start off with one discussion. Oh, yes, Marcia, I'm sorry. Yes.
Well, perhaps that he is giving them the idea that this is something that's going to live. It's going to move. It's going to be for the future, and it's going to be forever. It's not just now.
Okay. When you
That's
think,
why I use the word faith, Marty. Faith.
yes,
Faith
faith.
that all the promises are going to be fulfilled.
That's right. And hope
Yes.
is another
Hope.
term. But there's something in what we're reading that's a very important component. It's on one hand, it's okay to hope for something. On the other hand, you have to work for it. You cannot just sit back and let someone else do it. You have to participate in this. You have to volunteer. You may have to do work. You may enjoy the work. You may do it for a hobby, but you participate.
Well,
And
you create the hope.
Yes.
You hope for something, but then you do something about it, and it's the creation. So you're creating that hope.
Very good point. Yes, Rabbi Norman.
It's also building the confidence that this is something that we
Yes.
can do, rather than, oh, we'd never be able to accomplish that. I take it back to the building fund campaign, joke, is to say, well, here's our goal, and people are going to say, oh, we would never be able to raise that amount of money, or we would never be able to build that kind of a synagogue or whatever it might be. But then you actually go ahead and pursue the project and convince people that, oh no, yes, you do have the resources to do it.
That's right. Very good point. Yes, Gail.
That always reminds me of the story of Stone Soup. Does everyone recall that children's
Right.
book?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
Is-
I was thinking too of building the tent and all this stuff. You're also implying a destination for it.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Designation.
no, a destiny.
Yes, destiny as well. That's right. Yes, Don.
This must also be where the job of schlepper was created.
That comes a little later. That comes a little later in our reading, because each tribe is going to have, or clan is going to have its own responsibility. So they will, it's not everyone's responsibility. It is specifically for that clan and the members of that. And so each one will have a fixed time when you have to rebuild, okay, recreate everything again. It has to be in a fixed pattern. Who has to do what, when, to, so that it all comes together. We haven't gotten there yet, but this will come out. Yes.
That's the Transport and General Workers Union.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, Rabbi Norman.
I just want to point out, I find it very interesting and moving that the women are so prominently mentioned.
Yes.
Okay, that are on a totally equal level, men and women, all who are skilled, all who can give, all who can make and design and whatever. That's because that's not always the case in the women.
Yeah, you're right.
This is it in a way. It's also saying, in my mind anyway, it says to me that if everyone is participating, no matter who they are, they will reap the benefits of what they build. And in a way, I don't know who originally said it or what, but if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, Costner.
Okay, I don't
Costner.
know where the phrase originates,
Field
but,
of, well,
but
use
the
it in
concept is
Field of Dreams,
important.
but I don't, it probably is, probably predates that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Herzl said, if you dream it or if you have a vision of it, it's not going to be a legend. Yeah.
Right. But you had to work for that. You had to, it wasn't just a dream. You had to make some effort to see it through to fruition. So this is a very remarkable passage. I think I know we've been dwelling on this, but it is a very, very important passage, and in so many different ways, it should be encouraging all of us to say, man, this is great to be part of. Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, and one more thing picking up on that, it is this is the role and this is the opportunity for all the people. This is not just the priests and the Kohanim and the Leviim. This is what everyone. This is a project that everyone can be involved in, not just the leadership.
Right. That's right.
Okay?
But
There are those who have special skills. There are those who have the ability to perform certain tasks or have certain it's like the commentary is that when we're talking about the precious stones, that that the elders of each tribe had to bring the stones that represented their tribe, their clan, whatever. But all of the people anyone whose heart so moved him or her could participate and was invited to participate.
that's true. Yes, Michael.
I just want to make this comment. I kind of compel. Look right here in the United States, in the middle of the desert. Somebody had a vision to build something spectacular, and from a little hotel back in the early 40s comes now right in the middle of our desert this great thing called Las Vegas. I just had to I couldn't help myself.
Okay. I'm chuckling there. Okay.
I understand.
Some levity is good. But I think it becomes a very good example that each one of, by the way, philosophers through many different generations have discussed the importance of the individual versus the importance of community. They use different terminology, but in essence, if you think about it, both are necessary. And to put it together at this point in time, I think is very important to remember. So the next time you go out and you're eating out and the waiter does a good job, or the waitress does a good job, go ahead and tip her if you feel moved to do so. It's your free will offering, but to them it's their livelihood. Okay, and so that's the concept of tipping. Okay, it's your free will offering for a job well done. And so when you make your next donations to the temple, think of it as your free will offering to not the building, but all the people working together for job well done. Okay, because it goes for a good cause. Anyway, enough said about donations. Any other comments about this? Okay. I don't see any other hands up, so we will pick up, let's see, we have about 15 minutes. Well, let's see what happens. David, or if anyone else wants to read verses 30 through 35.
Okay, I'll be happy to. And there were 8 boards, and their sockets of silver, 16 sockets. Under every board, 2 sockets.
Wait a minute. Wait. We are on
Did I get the wrong?
Exodus
Wrong
35,
chapter, I think.
verse
wrong
30.
chapter.
Okay,
Wrong chapter. Okay, let's try it here.
you skipped ahead.
Yeah.
It starts, and Moses said to the Israelites. Okay, verse 30. It's chapter
Chapter 35.
35, verse 30. Okay, I'll go ahead and.
Okay,
and
don't
do
let
the-
them, you got it. Okay. so-
Yeah, I know. I saw you coughing and everything. So, okay.
And
Go ahead.
Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Ur, of the tribe of Judah. And he hath filled him with the Spirit of God, in wisdom and understanding and in knowledge, and in all manner of workmanship, and to devise skillful works, to work in gold and in silver and in brass, and in cutting of stones for setting, and in carving of wood, to work in all manner of skillful workmanship. And he hath put in his heart that he may teach both he and Oholiab, the son of Ahisamach, thank you, and the tribe of Dan. Them hath he filled with wisdom of heart, who work all manner of workmanship of the craftsman, of the skillful workman, of the weaver in colors, in blue and in purple and scarlet, and in fine linen, and of the weaver, even of them that do any workmanship, and of those that devise skillful works. And
Okay. Any comments? I don't see any hands up. Any,
Marty?
yes,
The Eitz Chaim commentary paraphrases the Rashi on the word in 31 on Bezalel's skill, ability, and knowledge. I think this is nice. Rashi defines skill, that's the Hebrew's chokhmah, as what a person learns from others. Ability, that's tavuna, as the result of one's own insight and experience, and knowledge, that's dat, as divine inspiration, ideas that suddenly come to a person from an unknown source.
That's lovely.
Yeah,
it
I
is
think
very well written. Man,
that's
that
the
is
Rashi.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we're doing all of these things in building this, the tent of meeting, building the ark, doing all of these things, all of these structures, one way you can also think of this, that you're in the service of God. You're giving back to God all of these things that are produced in nature with man's influence on how the carving takes place, how the stones are cut, and all of the rituals that will happen, all of the animals, all of the produce, all of these things that the grain that may be sacrificed and like that, as well as giving back of ourselves, of what we can do. Any idea about that? Yes, Don.
Well, I'm wondering, Marty, are we getting close to the boundary between the prohibition against graven images here? Because these artisans are called on to do fine designs. We don't know exactly what the designs are going to look like, but it seems like they could easily touch on what would be considered a graven image at the time.
From my standpoint, and this is just my own way of looking at it, these are not worshiped. They don't substitute for God. You're building a home where God may live. You're going to be building it so that you can invite God in. So I don't think the people would be doing anything. I don't know what the rabbinic answer to Don's question would be, but I don't see anything wrong with any of this.
No, it's providing, to enhance the atmosphere for worship.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than creating, the understanding is that they learned their lesson with the golden calf. They're not going to make that mistake again.
Now, I would say if I worshipped the calices, or if I worshipped the gold, or if I worshipped the jewels and things, that would be a different thing. And say, oh, they provide me with a special power. I feel a special power from them. That would be different than just saying what the rabbi just mentioned, that it's there so for everyone to be able to come together and enjoy the atmosphere. Yes, Marcia, you had your hand up.
Well, on another point, a lot of these people had skills, but having a skill and being inspired and taught by God, the skills went to another level. So it was the community that was learning.
Sure. I think it's an excellent way of putting it. In another way of putting it, what you learn and what you do, put it for a good cause, for a good reason. Yeah. So I just don't see these structures as being worship per se. So any other, I don't know about it. Rabbi Mary, did you have anything you wanted to add? No. Okay.
No.
Any other
Thank you.
comments about this? Yes, David.
I believe there is, just to follow up what Marty was just saying, a very big difference between simple respect and worship.
Yes.
I mean, you will respect all of these items that you're collecting for the construction of the ark, and you will even respect the ark when it is finished. But that is very different from worship.
Yes. And also I would add in respect the people themselves who are doing all of this work, each individual. So, yes. Rabbi Norman.
Yeah, I've always taken, just in this little phrase, I've always taken great strength in that the phrase that at the start of what is that? I don't know, 14. No, can't be 14, 34 maybe. That just as important as doing the design is to teach,
Mhm.
teach. So, and Marcia just said something similar like that. To teach and to demonstrate to others, and that's a gift. The phrase here is that's a gift that's given in his heart.
Yes.
Okay, that's the importance of doing that.
Good point. Good
It's
point.
interesting. Pesach is coming, which the main mitzvah is to teach, in my mind.
Interesting.
So it's, but since it's much later, it's nice to see it here.
Very nice. Let me call on
And
Amy and then
without-
Grace.
yeah.
I believe Grace has had her hand up
Oh,
for quite a
okay.
while.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Grace.
Thank you, Amy. What I'm reflecting in the past, before, when Moses was doing his thing with God, separated from the people, and Aaron was watching the people, and they were, being rambunctious. Weren't there some of the tribes that, before they knew they were tribes, they were arguing and fighting and being disruptive with one another? And I think that this looks like God is saying, I want you to work together as a community to develop, your skills from here and now on, right? So I see a lot of lesson in all that we have read today, many, many teachings, many things that, as a community, I don't know what community is. I'm learning. I'm learning that every day. So that's all I have to, I'm reflecting, for the whole, and looking at previous things. So I'm really asking a question. Wasn't there a time when they were just argumentative towards one another and not getting along, and that type of a situation? Am I making sense?
Although it's not mentioned, I think what you're saying is very important, because there has to be, they're all human, all of these people written in the book here, and like us today, there are lots of different opinions, and some people are going to be more vocal than others, and so it may we know in certain stories, some of which we will see, we know already about Jacob's family, the story of Joseph. We know that there's contention, that they write about it, and we know that there's also some in the Judah passage. So there may be certain other times in between. We shouldn't just disregard it. It's human nature that there's going to be some discontent too. Yes, Amy.
I think another interesting aspect of all of this constructing of the temple, they constructed it as a place to welcome God and to commune with God, to worship God. But the very act of creating the temple was an act of worship as well.
Mm-hmm. That's encompassing. Remember, the chapter starts with the Sabbath. And now we're going to build the community's why the temple is, it's not a temple, why a portable place of worship. The Mishkan is a way to bring the community together, doing the same thing at the same time every 7 days, which is an interesting concept. Yes, Marcia.
This is just a thought. I want to thank us all because this was a very important reading, and learning But then going back, what I learned, how is it going to affect me today and tomorrow and the next week? So I thank you, because you have to open your computer, you have to put the book in front of you, and then you have to listen and learn. But the learning is great, but what am I doing with it? So I keep thinking, how can this affect me today? So thank you again.
Very well stated, Marcia. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, I think this is a good place to stop for today. We've run out of time, literally. And so I think that, and I want to thank everyone for this was a great discussion that we had today. And I appreciate it a lot from everyone chipped in that little bit here and there. Are there any announcements? I know Ricky isn't here. I'm not, I know services and like that. I know we'll be meeting next week. So any other concept? Does anyone know what happened with the rabbi's wrist? You know, he had this.
Looks
No, but I
like
have an
carpal
announcement.
tunnel.
You know, whatever. I'll check with them. Okay. Were you going to say something? Please, Grace. Yes.
Yeah, just as a reminder, the deadline for the Seder to sign up and put your check in for Seder is the 22nd of March. So if you're wanting to go, haven't done so, please be reminded that
Good point.
that's
Good
the
point.
deadline.
Okay.
That's all.
All right.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, and have a great week.
You too, Marty.
Take care. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.